And now we wait. Our series for Advent is this whole thing about waiting, and let's face it, we have to admit, we're not very good at it sometimes. I mean, we get impatient very easily. We want things to be done sometimes before they even begin. Like I said to someone the other day, you know, I'm really tired of winter already, and then I realized winter hasn't even started yet. Still a couple more days. It's interesting how we can get like that, and how sometimes we just get so anxious and we get so ahead of ourselves that things seem to just start to fall apart. I was thinking the other day as I was preparing, and it's interesting, I remembered a time when I was actually a child. I was in Little League, and my father was the coach of the team. And it was great to have my dad as the coach. He was a very good and patient individual to help me to try to learn the sport. But we were involved in one of those games, and it's late now in the game, and we have runners in scoring position, and there's 2 outs, and I'm up at bat, and the pitcher automatically has 2 strikes on me, and I'm like, oh man, I got to do something. And the very next pitch was a little bit of chin music. Brushed me back so much I fell down because it was like, whoa, and right away I got all pumped up, and I was thinking, and I didn't know what to do, and I could hear my father like, you know, calm down. But the thing inside of me was like, well, what have I always seen the pros do? They run out and they start pummeling the pitcher, and I didn't do that. But you know, it's interesting. You get all worked up and you get excited. So I get back in the batter's box, and now I'm like, I'm going to fix this guy. You know what? That next pitch, I'm putting it over the fence. And I'm not known for being a home run hitter, so it's not like they were afraid of me for that. It's just with the runners in scoring position. So, you know, whatever it was, he got into my head. And so there I am, and I'm ready, and the pitch is coming, and I go to swing, and it's so far out of the strike zone, my bat was nowhere near it. But he did what he needed to do, because I remember when I went back into the dugout, my father came up to me and he said, you realize what happened. You let your passions get the best of you. You didn't think it through. You allowed yourself to be, in effect, manipulated. And he was right. We have to learn sometimes how to be patient and how to do things the right way. How to be able to achieve our goal. And as I think about it, you know, think about the world today. For the most part, you know, I remember when I was younger, there were kind of standards by which we were supposed to live. There were things that were put forth that were what we were trying to achieve. And nobody really disagreed on that part of it. We all kind of rallied around it and got together around that point. And among the things were, like, these are the certain things, these are the standards, if you will, that we want everybody to try to achieve, because that's how you have a great society and a good, holy church. And so we all kind of worked for it. Like take, for instance, truthfulness. I mean, we encourage everybody to be honest and good and faithful people. Think about now, like, you know, is that still the standard? Is it supposed to be that everybody's seeking the truth? Everybody wants to tell the truth. No, there's got to be something that we've got to, like, focus on. We have to have that goal in mind. And parents, that's what parents do. Parents, you spend your time raising your children, cultivating your children, teaching your children, encouraging your children to a standard, to a beauty, to a level. I mean, let's face it, I've known a lot of parents. There's no parent I know that get their little baby in their arms, brand new born baby, they look right in their baby's arms, and they say something to the effect of, like, I look forward to visiting in your prison someday. Nobody would do that. There's nobody that wants their children to be a bum or a brat. And that's why parents spend so much time, and like my father, being so patient, teaching us correct reactions, how to control ourselves, how to be self-possessed so that we're doing the good and the true and the beautiful. But that has to be measured on a standard. That has to be measured toward something. And I have to say, I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to go for further studies after the seminary, because one of the things that it gave me the opportunity to do is to spend a lot of time studying a lot of what St. John Paul II did. St. John Paul II was brilliant. He was just unbelievably insightful, and he had that ability to pierce into the mysteries and attain to what God himself was asking of us. And he did it so beautifully. One of the very first things he did when he became Pope was he established a pontifical commission on the family. And very early in his pontificate, one of those very beautiful documents that he was known for producing came out after 1981, called Familiaris Consortio. In it, he does admit that yes, the family today, marriage and the family today, are under a lot of struggle. There are points of darkness. There are problems that we do see and encounter, and that the attacks on marriage and the family continue to grow. Now, do keep in mind, he did come from a communist country, and so he even saw it then even more clearly because it was a lot more overt in some of the things that were happening. What he does is he acknowledges the difficulties and the struggles, but he goes on to beautifully paint an image of what the ideal and what the beauty ought to be. He doesn't negotiate on, but this is still what we're striving for. He doesn't lower it at all. He says, but this is what God intends. This is what God wants. And he encourages families to grow in love, to grow with one another, to be striving for that holiness, for that truth. And without families, society falls apart, churches fall apart. When there's brokenness everywhere, we have to admit something has to be made whole. I listened to today's readings. I love the Advent readings in particular, but now we're making that little bit of a shift in Advent. Those first 2 weeks had that sense of urgency to them. Prepare the way, get ready, the second coming. You've got to be ready now. It's going to happen any minute. And now we're kind of shifting to that softer tone, that be patient, wait, get ready, prepare. I think about St. John the Baptist, and I love all of these things, like St. John the Baptist. I mean, think about him for a second. Here he is in prison, and it's like he doesn't have a clue. No, he does. He knows what he's doing, and I think he's being very calculated in what he's trying to do here. He's in prison, and he knows Jesus. I mean, they were cousins. He knows Jesus. He knows the standard. He knows what the Messiah was supposed to do. So there's no surprises, really. And yet, think about it. They were cousins. They knew who they were. There's no surprise. Think about it. Like if they had a family gathering and the two of them are there, they're out in the backyard and they're doing what, holy people would do, playing the game Precursor and Messiah. John is going, why do I always have to be the precursor? He knew who he was, and Jesus knew who he was. And yet John is trying to get us to start to focus. See, the Jews all knew the standard. They knew the ideal. They knew what to expect. There were no surprises. Isaiah says it so clearly. The prophet Isaiah is saying, when you see these things, the time is here. When you see the blind regain their sight, the mute begin to see, the deaf begin to hear, that's the time. And the Jews were waiting for it and getting excited about it and being patient because they knew God's promise was going to come to fulfillment. But they had to wait and they had to be patient. And for us too, Jesus is the Messiah. He is the Lord. There is no other. And yet we too, we need to really start to focus once again. Think about Advent. Think about your Advent season. Think about how things ought to be going. Now, we can all admit, it doesn't always go the way we've planned. Let's face it, there's a lot of problems, especially in our families. There's a lot of things that do go wrong. But what's supposed to happen? Are we supposed to just quit? Just give up? No, that's not the standard that's set. We keep striving and we keep striving and we keep striving. See, I think one of the things that's missing today, well, two of the virtues that I think are missing today, well, we have faith, hope, and love. We understand those so much. Of the cardinal virtues, there are two virtues that I think are downplayed too much today. The virtue of prudence, which we're told in the Catechism is the charioteer of all the virtues. I mean, you gotta think it through. Kind of like what my dad was telling me. You've got to be patient. You've got to know what you're trying to accomplish. Don't let them, get under your skin. Be smart, be prudent. But the other one, and I think even more importantly today, is the virtue of temperance. I mean, how many people will tell me, oh, I lost my temper again? Temperance. the virtue that helps us moderate our reactions, the virtue that works in conjunction with the prudence to help us to be in self-possession, of being able to control ourselves and to be focused, to recognize the ideal and go after it, to not allow ourselves to become pushed about by everything that comes along and to be controlled by every little passion that we have. The virtue of temperance, I think, is so desperately needed today. How many people I see hurting each other. Spouses sometimes, I've seen like a husband sometimes chewing out his wife in front of everybody over something silly. Temperance, my dear brothers and sisters. Temperance. Maintaining that evenness, that sense of moderation, of being able to say, no, there's something more here that we have to get to, something that we have to be working on, that moderation of our passions. I mean, we look around so much today, and there is a lot of anger. There's a lot of people that are just running amok and doing all sorts of things that really are hurting others. We see it in our families so much. But we need to work on that anger. We need to kind of stress that, no, we have a goal in mind and we need to enact certain things. I mean, I was thinking the other day that there's a great episode of The Honeymooners. I only saw it on rerun. Sorry, I didn't see it when it was originally broadcast. But I was watching it, and there's this one episode, I mean, let's face it, if you've watched The Honeymooners, you know one thing about Ralph Cramden. He's an angry individual. His anger's always getting the better of him, and it's always like, bang, zoom, somebody. And this one episode, he was getting very riled, and someone gave him a technique about how to control his anger a little bit. And all he was supposed to do every time he got upset was say, pins and needles, needles and pins. It's a happy man that grins. So simple, right? Pins and needles, that's all you got to do, pins and needles. And he keeps getting hit, and he keeps getting hit, and his anger starts to well up to the point where he's going, pins and needles and needles. But it's something that was, I think, helpful to people like myself who can get very passionate, who can get very worked up, who sometimes can bark a little bit. To be able to say, no, maybe we need to slow down. I don't do the pins and needles thing, but I stop sometimes and just offer a quick prayer. I slow myself down and remind myself, no, in the virtue of temperance, what's the right reaction to whatever's going on around me? And it's not perfect, but if I quit, I'll never even start to begin to overcome some of that. And so I encourage all of you to remind one another, to be with one another, to strengthen one another, to be there for one another. There is an ideal that God had for us. There is a standard that he sets for us. And that's kind of what St. James is talking about. If you can, please, several times, reread that short passage from James's letter. Such a beautiful thing where, it's like, don't complain about one another. Help one another. Be there for one another. I mean, so many during this time of year, I see it happening a lot. There's this impatience. I want Christmas. I just want to get there. I want to do it. And I want to get my stuff. And how many of us are impatient and are overrun, and we're not being very temperate because we need to do something else. So here's a suggestion for the next couple of weeks. Here's a little bit of a suggestion. Maybe you can do this. Instead of saying, what am I going to get? Ask those around you, how can I help? Sounds too easy, doesn't it? How can I help? How can I help you? What is it that you need? What's going on for you? How can I be for you today? And maybe we can start to diffuse some of the anxiety that's out there, some of the restlessness that's out there. Maybe we can begin to diffuse, especially within our families. St. John Paul II spelled it out so beautifully when he detailed some of what the family ought to be, setting a standard of what it ought to be. Now, granted, I know we fall short. I know that there are many who have to deal with an alcoholic in their homes, drug addicts in their homes, abusers in their homes, and sometimes it might necessitate that step back. How can I help you? I'm going to step back for a little while. I'm going to let you ask for the help. But until you do, see, we have to be prudent in that regard, but we can't quit because the soul needs us. And so we all know what it's all about. Jesus came, why? To save us, to put us on that path of love, to help us to always see in the other someone to love. And if our first reactions are only reactions, let's face it, we'll get a lot of what we're seeing today. Impatience, anger, hurt. But if we, Christians, can start right now to invoke that virtue of temperance, to become more prudent, think of what can be. Think of how things will change. Yes, there are miracles all the time. And yes, it can begin by us ourselves saying, am I a temperate person? Am I being prudent in this next move? Is what I'm about to do going to hurt or to build up? You know as well as I do that we're all excited about Christmas, but we have to be patient in waiting for it to come. Just like all the things we need to learn in life, all the things that I did learn from my mother and my father, we have to be focused on what we're trying to achieve. And so what are we really trying to achieve on Christmas? It's not gift giving. Gifts are nice, but what is it we're trying to achieve? Love. And St. John Paul, that was the point of Familiaris Consortio. It's about love. It's about self-sacrifice, self-possession. It's about building each other up, not tearing each other down. And so let's set that as a goal and then work toward that goal. Let's have that ideal before us always and strive for that ideal. Will it be easy? Absolutely not. But will it be worth it? Absolutely. And so this Christmas, I hope the gift that you all give and that you all receive is the gift of love, and especially love within your family. God bless you.